Let's Talk Native is produced at the LTN Studios on the Cattaraugus territory of the Seneca Nation. We break all the rules for Native media by peeling back the layers of assimilation and indoctrination. No prayers, no buffalo speeches, and no spirituality shows. While this podcast does not provide a path to spiritual enlightenment, we do take a tough look at history, oppression, and our survival. But the real goal here is to bring our people together by breaking down what separates us. So, welcome to Let's Talk Native with John Kane.
Sego, and welcome to Let's Talk Native. I am John Kane. I am your host, and I want to do something a little different with this show and actually the next and the show after this. We're going to do a two-part series, and this will be part one, obviously, of that series. And what I'm going to talk about is warrior society, and I don't mean just a specific warrior society, although we'll start there. But what this concept has come to mean, where it comes from. How the idea was structured. So we're going to get into a bunch of that. And my guest is my longtime friend, Tekarontake, otherwise known in some parts as Paul Delaronde. And so Paul will be joining me because basically he's been with this concept, and I say from the beginning, but what I mean is from the beginning of almost a resurgency, I would say, of the warrior society, with what some call the sovereignty movement. But I want to, we'll go from there. So first, let me go ahead and introduce my friend Tekarontake. Paul, it's great to have you back on the program. It's been a little bit, so it's good to have you join me.
Oh, I'm glad to be on today. Yeah.
So let me just get to the basics. And there's a lot of illusions or ideas that people have about what is or isn't a warrior society. And of course, when people even use that expression, oftentimes their imagination or their minds go straight to where to the Mohawks, to Ganawage and what we've seen in some of these acts of resistance and sometimes defiance against Canada and the United States. So let me just put it back to you. Where did you and some of the guys that you grew up with in basically within this context of a growing sense of really asserting Native identity and that kind of stuff, where did the warrior society idea spring from, and how does it begin?
Well, John, I have to say, for me, it's been my whole life. I grew up in a family and around people of the Longhouse who have always been, as far as I can remember, been a very strong people, people who spoke out for what they stood for and what they believed, and it was always about our people, about our ways, about the way the way we see and our connection to everything that we know is real, that creation shows us. And so, at an early age of 5 years old, I was involved. I was part of the family. My grandfather, my grandmother, others like Standing Arrow and Mad Bear Anderson, and many different people. And together, some got right involved, like my family and Standing Arrow's family, and we took over land in the Mohawk Valley. This was back in the 50s when the Seaway came through Ganawag and Akwesasne. And because so many of our people weren't prepared to stand and fight for these, and our family did. I mean, my great-grandparents almost got blown up in their home. The Army Corps of Engineers dug right around their house, and their house was on a mushroom. And they told them, if you don't get out, we're going to blow you up with it and that. And, it was the family that managed to talk my great-grandparents out of coming out of that house. But other people's homes were burnt and so on. and my grandfather and others were standing up against it. But too many of our people backstabbed, and so my grandfather didn't want to stay there. So he organized a group, and we went and took over land in Ohio Valley. We were there for a little over a year and that, and promises were made to us and that. And people have to remember, at that time, we didn't really have any really articulate English speakers, and we didn't know that much about the white man's law other than that it didn't help us. And so we moved back. And I always asked my grandmother, why did we leave? Because as a child, some of the fondest memories were there. And my grandmother used to always just say, listen and learn, and someday we'll return. And so growing up in Ganawage and always being at the Longhouse and listening to the old timers and so on, and that I and my others, we really believed in what our parents and grandparents were telling us, what our aunts and uncles and what the people were showing us. And we always understood that we had our own way and that the government was forcing things upon us that was not acceptable to our people because we knew it was the thing that was going to destroy us. So we did everything to try to retain who we are. And for a long time, we had no more songs. We had no dances left in Ganawage because being a Longhouse person, you were an outlaw. And if you tried to practice ceremony or anything, your ceremonies got raided like it was a big drug bust. And our women, children, and people had to run through the bushes to get away from the RCMP. In 1924, they finally let our people do things without raiding them anymore because they believed we were done. But no, we continued. And so growing up and listening to all these things from the old people and that, and they helped us and they brought up our songs and our dances and that back in the 60s. And we just became very involved, and we found great spirit in our songs and dances. And the young people came, and everybody had a good time. Grandmothers and grandfathers and parents and everybody, children, we all had a good time singing and dancing. But there was more to our ways than singing and dancing. And we kept listening to the stories and the things that they talked about. And so they mentioned to us about the responsibilities of people. And one of the responsibilities of a part of our society was the men. And they talked about the men's council fire, and that the men had a right to counsel, and the men could, work on things. And so this is what we started to do. So as a singing society, we decided we wanted to be the men's fire, the men's society, and take on responsibility. And so we went to the council, like the Rodianes, and we asked them to sanction us. And they said to us, we can't do that. And we said, why not? We were kind of shocked because these are the people who are teaching us, and they're telling us they can't sanction us. And then they said, it's already prescribed in Guyana de Goa. You do not need our permission. It's up to you to take responsibility, and you rekindle your fire. And so we were really glad about that, and we started to do this. And then what you call it? We started organizing more things. We started more organizing social dances and now things were starting to happen all over, and people like Louis Hall, who he and Pete Dion used to write the Longhouse News and stuff like that, and a lot of people, the Christians especially, were so opposed to it. The elective system was so opposed to these guys' writings and that. But as much as people criticized it, everybody was reading it.
Let me stop you just for a second because, during this process, I mean, where you were transitioning from almost exclusively being a singing society and starting to do more, it's my understanding that you guys already began traveling to some extent, and you were actually going to other territories to learn songs and to bring some of those songs back. So it seems there was already a network that was beginning, as a singing society that would actually feed some of this other responsibility.
Oh, yeah, because we traveled. I mean, We went out to Onondaga, and we got sound from guys like Gordon Peters. We went out to Tonawanda. We went to Oswego. We went to wherever we knew somebody who was a good singer. We went out and found Tom Lewis and guys like this. And then we had recordings of Asana. People might remember him. Well, maybe not, but an old time his name was Asana, who was Cusick. Well, I can't remember his first name, but anyway, we got all these recordings, and we started bringing it back, and we organized ourselves, and we made like small caravans, and we started traveling to every community we could, and that to try to bring an awareness to young people. But when we met, we sent word ahead of time. And the thing is that we didn't just pack up and decide we're going to do this. One of the things we learned was before we set out to do anything, we went to the people and we told the people what it was we wanted to do. And so they would gather us at the Longhouse, and they would make what they call a bundle, which is our instructions of what our mission was going to be, and that we were cautioned to only carry out what our mission is, and that we were not ever to be distracted from what we're doing. As young guys, you travel around, you see a nice, pretty girl, you want to get acquainted. But when we traveled, yes, we were very nice to people, but we kept it in our minds that we could not bring shame to our people. We could not embarrass our people. So we had to be always on our best behavior. No matter what mission we were on, we always had a bundle made. We never acted on our own, because the things we knew, we were young, we knew we were learning, and we wanted that guidance from people who knew what we believed better than us. And so that's what we followed. And all of a sudden, people who were conditioned to hate the Longhouse really had bad thoughts and bad things that they wanted to do, but we stuck together and we worked. But we always went into the communities and talked to people.
Now, I guess I also wanted to mention that the stories that I've heard, especially from Ganawage, was this whole notion that yes, to a large extent, any Longhouse practices, had gone underground for a period of time, and it was during this time that you're talking about where all of a sudden the Longhouses started having more and more people attending, and the songs were resonating and essentially echoing through the community. And even the non-Longhouse people, even the Christians, were oftentimes being seen standing a distance back from the Longhouse, just observing and listening and just hearing the songs, and we're already beginning to connect to this part of the culture that had essentially been gone for a while. So there was a resonance that was happening within the community, as I understood it.
Yes, it was the music. One thing about our music, young or old, when a person, even if they've never heard this music before, when they hear the beating of the drum and they hear those voices singing, and that everybody wants that connection. But the thing is that so many of the Christians, they were hiding around in the bushes, and you knew they were there because you could see the light of their cigarette, and that they're all listening and watching, and that. But one of the things about the older people is they even made outfits for their children, so the children can come and dance with us. And it just kept growing and growing, and finally they start coming out of the bushes, and they started getting involved in that.
So even though some of those folks would not necessarily publicly demonstrate that they have moved away from the church, they were actually encouraging their kids to go to Longhouse even before they would cross that line. Well, that's interesting. That's fascinating.
Yes, because any parent, when you see your children going to a place it's alcohol free, and that there's grandmothers and grandfathers and people to look out for you. And every time we had a social gathering, the women brought food and all the kids, everybody ate. Everybody had a good time. And the storytelling in between the songs and so on. This is where the young people were learning so much. and so we just kept on growing, and then as we were getting older, things were happening around us, and there were issues concerning land. There was issues concerning our rights and so on, like the border crossing rights and so on. And and we got involved in all these things. We went out there to help out in any way we could, and but we always had the support of the people. We never acted on our own, and so. So then when we rekindled the fire and the men's council fire, and then I tell people there was only 7 of us at the beginning. And for a number of years, it was only the 7 of us. And then, there was issues concerning education, and, it was a mix of some guys and some of the women. We took over Indian affairs. That was the same time the longest walk, they took over the BIA. We didn't know. It was just by coincidence that we occupied both Indian bureaus in North America.
The trail of broken treaties and that kind of thing that was taking place in Washington.
Yeah.
You guys were doing the same thing in Ottawa?
My father and my cousins, they were all on that trail of broken treaties. And 5 of us guys and 3 of the women, we needed tuition paid for our children because we started our own school at that time, and our school was already going that year we started, and we were helping out wherever we could. But it was hard for us to keep teachers because they had to get paid, and people you have to have a salary. They need to eat and pay their bills, and so we said, we're going to get monies, and we demanded that monies come out of what we call the Indian Trust Fund. We didn't want like BIA funds, like government funds. We wanted our money, and so we occupied Indian Affairs. We held it a couple of days, and they finally agreed, and they reneged, and we went back this time with a bigger force, and we took over the building again. But this time we struck a lot of fear in them. And so they gave us the tuition, but more than that, they gave us a school, and they gave us a school bus, and they bought us steak dinners. But the thing is, we always, had peace on our minds, but we always expected that we were going to get into a fight with them, because that's the only way the outsider knew how to deal with Indians was either lie to us and have us accept their lies or beat us up and throw us in jail. Well, we were prepared for whatever was going to come, but we were not leaving without getting what we went for. And so that school, I'm proud to say, is now over 50 years. That school is still running. And it's probably one of the best schools in Indian country. And I'm very proud of it, And so we just kept on, and then when there was the people of Kahnawake, we were starting to get overrun by non-natives. We had something like 2,900 non-natives living in Kahnawake. Meanwhile, our young families, have to leave because there's no land, no grants, and no houses.
Now how does that happen? Is this because of intermarrying, or
No.
just taking up lots, or what?
No, it's because the thing is that some non-natives could get a status card. They, for some, they know who palms to grease, or there was many ways that they got a bank card, and they would get the grants, and they get their land allotment. And the people said, enough of this. And the thing is, for generations, there are people who wanted these non-natives of the territory. There were some non-natives who were, people had no problem with them. Like, we had a blacksmith come in, and he and his family, and he repaired all the things for our people. We had a baker. We had, all different people like that. So that was good. But we had a whole bunch of people who just wanted to get away from paying taxes and living on our land and depriving our people. And so the old people had enough and said, that's it. You guys, we got to do something about this. So they decided they were going to give notice and serve eviction notice on these people. And so they asked us, the Discord, I guess, that we would support them. And we said, if this is what you've decided, of course we will stand and support you.
Well,
And so we
let me
carried out the doing.
hold up just for a minute. So at this point, are you mentioned Rudy Scotto. So are you now identifying yourselves as the men, and has this transitioned to being referred to as the Warrior Society, or not yet?
No, no, we were always Rudy Scotto.
Right. No, I understand that.
But you know what happened was that we used to go and talk to different older people, for knowledge and instructions and so on. And one of them says to us, he says, "You guys sometimes find yourselves in some very tense situations." He says, "You're so few." And he says, "You got to understand." He says, "We as Native people, we are in a psychological war." And so he says, "You should build your psychological arsenal." And we're just kind of, we have big eyes and big ears and wonder, what the hell is this guy really talking about? And he says, "Look," he says, "the white man has portrayed the Ungwahumwe man as being a savage, as being a killer, as being all these negative things, the fighting Indians of the Americas, the young bucks, and this and that." He says, "Why don't you use a psychological weapon?" He says, "Why don't you, in English," he says, "refer to yourselves as a warrior society." And and it worked on that because there were only 7 of us. And so we asked him, he was an artist. That's how we asked him. We said, "Make us like a crest and that." And so we had he made us this crest. He said, because we had a crest as a singing society, and so we wanted one for as a as a warrior society. So he made us one, and then we went to a printer to have it made, these crests, and the printer there says, instead of you just buying 7, he says, for a little bit more money, he says, it'd be cheaper. He says you could get like 250 of these crests. And we thought, geez, what are we going to do with so many? So we thought, well, we'll have spares. And so we did buy it and that. And so when we came home, we put these crests on our jacket. All the young people, everybody loved this crest and everybody wanted one. So the 7 of us had a meeting about it, and we says, "What are we going to do?" So we said, "Well, why don't we just give it to them?" So we started handing them out to all the young people. And then all of a sudden, everybody's got this on their jacket. Now, all of a sudden, and in them days, everybody wore blue jean jackets, denim. And so they started to refer to us as the Blue Jackets. And everybody had this crest. So, now when the band council or the police or, anybody looked at us, they didn't see only a few anymore. They seen a couple of hundred of these crests all over the community. And so it really had a big effect. And then more young people were open to hearing what we were about and what we were trying to do and what we were working for and so on. And, and so we had a lot more like moral support. But when the eviction happened, these young people came out of the woodwork. Holy moly. And when the police invaded our territory and we struck back, when we saw them abusing our women and they attacked us and that, then we all hell broke loose and that. And we just used our bare hands and we flipped their cars over. We ran them off the territory and they were crying like baby girls, And then hours later, they came back marching with guns and that. And so in them days, all we had was like shotguns and hunting rifles and stuff like that. So we all went because we knew we were going to have to defend ourselves. And we had a big standoff for, I don't know, about 3 months or something. And that was right after Wounded Knee.
So I mean, so you guys knew early on that arming yourselves was necessary, and although
yes.
you guys were there I can't think of any stories about you guys ever abusing that power that came with arming yourselves. It was clear that you needed to not only demonstrate resistance with your bodies, but you had to demonstrate even to a disproportionately larger group of armed men that you guys were prepared to shoot back if necessary.
Yeah, I mean, it was simple. If nobody's afraid of a bear when you pull out all its claws and take out its teeth. There's very little the bear could do. And that's why in circuses, they got these guys wrestling a bear. Because he's got no more claws and he's got no more fangs. And you know, in creation, every single creature and that was instilled in them by creation, what's called self-preservation. Even a mouse, if you corner a mouse, most of the time a mouse and even a bear will try to avoid you. But when you corner them and give them no alternative, they will fight back. And you sometimes you see a little mouse jumping at a dog or a cat, and the cat and dog, they're not so eager just to jump in and attack that mouse because they know that mouse might hurt them. And so this is what we understood is that if we don't show them we have claws and if we don't show them we have teeth, they're just going to come in and beat us all up and throw us in jail and have their way with us. Well, we were not going to allow that to happen because we've seen it happen too many times. And there's no way I'm going to stand by and let my grandmother or my aunts, my parents, anybody, I won't stand by to watch them be abused.
But again,
to
be clear, you guys didn't arm yourselves for the evictions. You basically
No.
only armed yourselves when the outside forces were
right.
coming down on you. I mean, because I think it's important that people realize that there's no instances where anybody representing themselves as the warriors or the warrior society took up arms against their own people.
No, in fact, everything we were doing was peaceful, and that the only thing we were armed with was with a notice telling the non-natives they had 30 days to leave, and if they needed more time, they should go to the council and to the DNSO and talk to them and that. And some of them who were farmers and that, the DNSO gave them a year, and that's so they could get their harvest in and find a new farm and move their cattle and everything else. So I mean. Our people were not mean about it, and we also explained why we were doing it, and that. But it was the Man Council who was against it, and Indian Affairs and so on. They were against us, and that, and so when we finally we got attacked, we weren't armed or anything, and then they sent in riot squads with shields and helmets, and they looked like Gestapo. And they came in and they started clubbing us. And we did whatever we could to defend ourselves because we had nothing. We didn't even have a stick. And that day, I got 2 of my ribs broken. My uncle got 3 of his ribs broken. And we got people who got pretty badly bruised, men and women. And that's enough was enough. And our people with no weapons, we went after the police. And we flipped their cars over. We ran them right out of the community. But they came back armed like military. They came in marching with guns and so on. And we knew that there was no turning back. And so we did what we had to. And came so many of them. And they were running around all over our community and beating people up and stuff. And so we just started to fight back. All of a sudden we were at the Longhouse. We were under siege. And people who were prepared to stand and fight came and stood with us and that, and then the call went out, and Uncle Homer came from all over North America, and from as far as Oklahoma, California, South Dakota. They came from British Columbia. They came from the Maritimes. They came from all over, and there were thousands, and the people were all over. And Canada realized that they made a big mistake. That now you had thousands of Native people who were ready to do whatever was necessary, but they were not going to allow something to happen again like what happened at Wounded Knee. Mm-hmm. And yes.
So so some of these other territories now they started. Of course, there was the American Indian movement, and that was taking root in some places. But there are also many of these territories that were opting to follow the warrior society model that you guys had already begun.
Well, because we had become very well acquainted with the American Indian movement, and they asked us if we would join forces, and so we brought it to the council. We took it all the way to Grand Council, and we asked them. We asked them for their advice and guidance, and then it was explained to us: we are part of a people. We are nations. Whereas the American Indian movement, yes, they are Native people and that, but they're an organization. They don't represent, they don't represent the way we do, and that we have our own government. Whereas they were in the American Indian movement. I mean, I have the greatest respect for them, and that, but they were an organization, and we had ways to protect ourselves, and this is why. They couldn't infiltrate us as they did the American Indian movement, and so we were told, that we were free to join, but to remember that if we joined an organization contrary to their goal, we would be alienating ourselves, and so what we did then was we spoke with the American Indian movement, we talked with them, and and we came to an understanding that we would stand together. But the American Indian movement could not represent us; that we would represent ourselves. And people like Vernon Belcourt, Dennis Banks, Russell, everybody, they all understood that. But they didn't have traditional councils the way we did in the Iroquois territories, the Haudenosaunee, and so they were kind of handicapped in that way. And even though they had support of the traditional peoples and so on, but their ways of government have been totally overrun by the United States and Canada. And but we somehow, as Haudenosaunee, we maintained it. As broken as it was still being maintained to the best of our ability. And it was getting stronger. It was getting stronger each year. We were getting stronger, and more awareness.
Hey, Dega, with the time we have left in this episode, I do want to move a little bit into the organization and the fact that you guys became able to fund yourselves, and I know tobacco comes into the conversation, but walk us through a little of that and how that you were enabled to not only create an organization, but create pockets of funding that could go to various parts of the community. Break that, and then we'll take a break, and we'll pick up episode 2 after that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, when we first started, like the guys, we get together, and we all, every time we had a meeting, we threw $2 into the hat, and so. If ever we decide we need to do something, to go somewhere, this collection would accumulate, and we'd use that. Or else, when we met with the council and the people and that, then they would pass the hat, and everybody would chip in and help us, and for gas money, and to be able to eat. And when we went to other territories, the people over there, they helped us. They made collections, they fed us, they put us up and everything. And but a lot of times, distances, depending on the time of year, we would pick cabbage or cucumbers or apples or something to make money along the way, to keep us going. And a lot of times we slept under overpasses and in fields, and just to be able to get our word out. And so we talked about this, and we said, this is really hard, and it's sometimes not all of the communities have full pockets, So we looked at what was going on in the United States when people were selling cigarettes and stuff like that, and so we decided we would try to start and sell cigarettes and be able to make money, start to put money towards building an economic system for our people, to finance things that people needed. And so that's what we did. We started selling cigarettes. And, everybody was, saying, how can you do this? Do you have a license? And we said, yes, we have a license. And basically, I showed them the license I carried. It was, 3 baseball bats and 3 shotguns in my truck. Because I said I was going to defend this. I was going to defend this no matter how. I was going to defend this side. Nobody had the right to deprive me and my people of having an economic right.
No, in the
Right
beginning,
to
in the
defend
beginning,
ourselves.
there was only very few that had taken this path, and I know you guys had begun the flea market there, and so you not only had a variety of
Well,
sellers
the
that were
flea
doing.
market came. Yeah, the flea market came a little bit later. See, all we did was we only sold cigarettes on the weekend,
Okay.
and because I was teaching high school at the time, and we on the Saturday and Sunday we sell the cigarettes. I never kept a cent from it. All the money that we made from selling cigarettes, I always threw everything back into the till except to pay the guys that were working there all day long, and that, and and there was only four of us doing it, but more and more of the people started coming around, men and women, and they brought their families, and it kind of became a family event every weekend, and so more and more people came. And we sold cigarettes for a year and a half before anybody else would dare. They wanted to see what was going to happen to me. And after a year and a half, and then they said, look, he's able to sell. Nobody's bothering him. All of a sudden, the smoke shops went up. And people came to us. And we started financing. All of a sudden, we had 70 smoke shops in our community. We financed half of them.
Now, were you also involved in wholesaling to them too, or were you just financing?
Yeah.
Okay, so you were wholesaling, and you were basically taking some position with many of these shops.
Yes, we financed. Plus, we were supplying because a lot of them were afraid to go and get the cigarettes.
Right.
And but we had such a network, and it wasn't just people from Ganoas. We had people from we had people from Tekarontake. We had people from all over. And we had a network, and we were moving all these cigarettes. And then we put together a system that for every carton we sold, 27 cents went to the men, 27 cents went to the women, and the men and women could decide what they wanted to do with that for men's projects or women's projects, and we put 7 cents aside for the community, 7 cents aside for the nation, 7 cents aside for the Confederacy, and we put $1 aside for what we call land society, that we will use these monies to start getting land back that our people could control. And we also put $1 aside for what we call tobacco society, which was really for economic development. And the rest of the money we put back into our operations to use as the capital to keep building our industry. And so now, we're able to finance a lot of sporting activities, all kinds of, put new porches on people's houses, windows and doors and roofs, and whatever people needed to help them out, because a lot of people needed the help. And they were always told the bank council will help you, but they didn't. They picked and choose who they'd help, whereas we would help anybody who came to us.
No, I also know that you guys, from an organizational standpoint, from the Warrior Society themselves, you obviously you were self-sufficient, so you had a base of operation. You guys became a little bit more equipped.
Yeah.
I know there was radios. I recall one time being up there when somebody passed a counterfeit bill into one of the shops, and the word went out, and you guys flocked and actually caught the guy. It was to see the organization and how quickly you guys could be mobilized just for the passing of a counterfeit bill. It was amazing to watch, but it gave a clear indication about the efficiency with which you guys operated, how quickly you guys could mobilize, how good your communication system was, and how much the community relied on you guys.
Yes, because the community relied on us to watch if any outsiders came in, that they wouldn't try to take our children and molest our children, or else to try to sell drugs into our communities. And that we caught so many drug dealers, and we just turned them over to the police with the evidence and all. And we said, look, these are your people. You take responsibility for them. Because we didn't have jails and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And making them run the gauntlet at that time was unacceptable by by everybody in the world. I guess.
Yeah. Let's
So, I mean,
let's do this. Let's give it this a break here, and
Okay.
we'll pick it up for the next episode where we'll get into. Obviously, we can talk about the successes, but there's also some of the areas that where things start to break down a little bit, and I want to talk about the legacy of what was begun during this period of time, for better or worse, and of course, where we find ourselves now. So we'll take a break now. Folks, for those of you who are listening who don't know, Paul Delaronde is my guest for this program and the next. We are talking about where warrior society, the notion and the idea, was developed, and how it came to be, and where things are now. So this will conclude episode 1. We'll pick it up in the next episode. So again, check this program out, share this program, and be sure to check out the next one. This is John Kane with Paul Delaronde, Tekarontake, and this is Let's Talk Native. Yahweh.